Now moving on, just 15 days left before Israel's 2021 Knesset elections. But despite heading back to the polls for the fourth time in just 2 years, many of the parties in the running are either new or renewed. So we thought it'd be a good idea to remind you what the different factions stand for, and we begin with the Ultra-Orthodox Shas and United Torah Judaism parties. Currently serving with 9 and 7 Knesset seats respectively, Ultra-Orthodox parties Shas and United Torah Judaism together form what Israelis commonly call the religious Knesset bloc. But while often lumped together as a right-wing pair for continuing to sit with the Netanyahu coalitions, the two parties do differ on some policies, and they represent different swaths of the Jewish Israeli electorate, neither traditionally left nor right. Shas, for one, led by Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, was founded as the party for Sephardic or Middle Eastern Jews, and many of its voters are traditional, modern Orthodox, and ultra-Orthodox in practice, with Shas campaigning on protecting the religious and cultural heritage of Sephardic Jewry overall. To that end, Shas has worked with parties across the spectrum, establishing government-funded religious education systems in poor Sephardic towns, opposing the division of Jerusalem, pushing for increased Jewish religious law in Israel, advocating for living an ultra-Orthodox lifestyle, and opposing Israeli settlement freezes in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank. United Torah Judaism, or UTJ, meanwhile, was until recently led by Housing Minister and former Health Minister Yaakov Litzman, but it's now under Moshe Gafni's leadership. And as a conglomerate of two smaller parties, UTJ mostly represents Ashkenazi or European Haredi Jews' interests, like preserving the religious Jewish legal authority in Israel. UTJ differs from Shas, however, in that it characterizes itself as a generally non-Zionist party, with more concern for religion than security or diplomacy. For example, UTJ was party to the 2005 Gaza disengagement and has no uniform opinion on Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Still, UTJ and Shas do greatly influence one another and more often than not vote together, which brings us to the controversies that both parties face. For one, both Shas and UTJ have a long history with corruption charges. Former UTJ chair Yaakov Litzman is being accused of manipulating the psych evaluations for alleged rapist Malka Leifer, and police recommending indictments against Shas head Aryeh Deri in 2018 after he already served time in prison for similar charges in 2000. Meanwhile, the public largely blaming the Haredi sector for a lag in Israel's coronavirus response and growing misinformation campaign. Former Health Minister Yaakov Litzman himself falling ill after breaking quarantine restrictions last year, while Shas was fined by the Elections Committee for handing out prayer cards at polling stations that claimed to cure coronavirus and other illnesses. Then social policies not winning many popularity contests either, both parties abjectly opposing any public expression of homosexuality, rejecting the court's recognition of gay marriages performed abroad, and also rejecting the role of women in politics, arguing that Jewish law dictates the separation of gender roles. And finally, most recently, both parties are fighting hard to reverse the court's recognition of non-ultra-Orthodox conversions to Judaism. UTJ having even run a campaign ad over the weekend likening non-Haredi Jewish converts to dogs.